Charter for Compassion's Global Youth Conference. It is such an honor and privilege to be moderating today's conversation, which really focuses on the topic youth catalyzing change, driving inclusive and peaceful societies. And really today we'll be honing in on United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 16 that concerns peace, justice, and strong institutions. And we're joined by panelists who will really help us dive deep into the ways that young people can advocate for peace, for justice, for human rights, and inclusive development. I am really excited to just jump into the conversation, but I'm even more excited by the incredible group of leaders that we have here today who are serving on our panel. And I really love every single person who's on this list of panelists because they are really doing the work of walking the talk when it comes to calling young people to action and supporting them to make a real tangible change in society. And so I have the privilege of introducing our panelists, and I will do so now as briefly as I can and in no particular order. First, today we have Dr. Yosuke Nagai, who is the founder and executive director of Accept International, which was established in 2011, and it's dedicated to empowering marginalized youth, particularly disengaged combatants, by helping them transition into agents of peace. Incredible. This work focuses on de-radicalizing, reintegrating, and rehabilitating defectors, prisoners, and detainees of non-state armed groups, particularly violent extremist groups in areas such as Somalia, Yemen, Kenya, Indonesia, and Colombia. In 2023, Dr. Nagai launched the Global Task Force for Youth Combatants to address the needs of youth associated with non-state armed groups globally. Dr. Nagai holds a PhD in social science from Waseda University, a master's in conflict studies from the London School of Economics, and has held fellowships at the University of Oxford and the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law. Additionally, and maybe this is what you do in your spare time, Dr. Nagai is also involved in various UN advisory boards and working groups. Welcome, Dr. Nagai. It is an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. We also have Anna Ko here. Anna is a skilled facilitator and project manager with expertise in driving programs that promote diversity, inclusion, and community relationships. Anna holds a master's degree in public policy and management, as well as a BA in politics and international relations. And prior to joining the International Dialogue Center CICED in 2022, Anna worked at organizations such as the Faith and Belief Forum in London and Impact Hub Lisbon, where she managed capacity building programs for women, entrepreneurs, and migrant women. Currently, Anna serves as the program officer for fellows at CICED, and in this role, she supports the International Fellows Program and coordinates the Fellows Alumni Network, fostering interreligious and intercultural dialogue and cooperation worldwide. What a pleasure it is to have you join us, Anna. Welcome to today's conversation. Next, we have Laith Abu Rub. Laith describes himself as a principled and tenacious leader who's committed to contributing to positive growth wherever he may be. Laith serves as the founder and president of the European Arab Student Union. And Laith, interestingly, is of Palestinian origin and was born and raised in Jordan. And he's currently at IE University in Madrid pursuing a bachelor's in business administration and international relations. Laith is someone who looks at challenges and obstacles as motivation, and he's dedicating to finding ways to overcome them. We're so grateful to have you here today. Welcome, Laith. And then finally, we have Samira Fatma Baruchia. Samira is the regional coordinator of the URI multi-region based in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. In this role, she supports grassroots groups worldwide in fostering dialogue and interfaith cooperation. Samira has 13 years of experience in civil society, where she specializes in non-formal education awareness and empower communities for positive change. Samira is the founding member and board member of Youth for Peace, a youth-led organization that focuses on peace building. Samira also served as one of the 16 global youth leaders in the UNDP's Global Youth Program, working towards the UN's 2030 agenda. And outside of her work, Samira enjoys traveling and cooking. Welcome, Samira. It is lovely to have all of you join us today. And I really would love us to get started with our conversation. And really, to get us started, this is a question for everyone on the panel. I really want us to hone in on this idea of the SDG 16, which looks at peace, justice, and strong institutions. And I'd like you all, as panelists, to imagine a world where SDG 16 is fully realized. What does that world look like to you? And how does your work contribute to making that vision a reality? Dr. Nagai, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really glad to be here today. My name is Yosuke Nagai. I'm the Executive Director of ACCEPT. And yes, so actually SDG 16 is one of the most important agenda among the SDGs goals because that's about peace. So peace is foundation and also ultimate goal. So that's why I think we, the world, really need to do more, to achieve this goal because this goal is really huge. And one of the main things is to reduce the violence, including terrorism, armed conflicts, any kind of violence. So that's really, significant one. So we really have to tackle that. So actually, as for me, well, as Accept International, we have been always providing like disengagement support from non-state armed groups, and followed by rehabilitation, the reintegration support, like basic education, vocational trainings, religious education with the local imams, so something like that. And we just providing like opportunities where they can pursue new life because most of people in non-state armed groups, including designated terrorist organizations, are youth like us, young generations. So as for me, I can say that they are hidden youth, really, really, left out so far. Because when we talk about youth engagement, youth empowerment, everywhere, like in New York, Geneva, we rarely mention them. So that's why it, as for me and us, we really, would like to approach to them and to unleash their potential and to become them a unique agent of peace. So that's one of our approach toward that goal 16. And actually, for that perspectives, actually we established and we launched it last month, the Global Task Force for Youth Combatants. So that's like a purpose is to focus more on the unique potential of such young generations. So that's why I anyway really like to do more to unpack their potential, immense potential together, and hope that approach is somehow rare, but is really really necessary one of the necessary approach. So yeah, that's very brief and quick explanations, but that's our approach to the goal.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Inspired by your work, not just highlighting the potential of all youth, but particularly those hidden youth. Really incredible work. I'm going to move on to Samira. Same question to you, Samira. World where SDG 16 is fully realized, what does that look like to you, and how does your work contribute to making that vision a reality?
Such an easy question. I think the more I think about this, the more I settle that in this sort of small vision of mine, that if the SDG 16 is fully implemented within our societies, starting from our countries and then lower levels in our community organizing, but also globally, that would mean that we have a sustainable system that is being run in order to preserve justice and work against corruption, against human rights violations. And so that system would be able to prevent wrongdoings in communities that affect status of justice and peace. So that's one side of it, prevention. And then on the other hand, there is a just system designed to reform or transform what might happen under the influence of challenging behavior to manage, and in general, what we're left after conflicts and violence in our community. So it will be just a very well-tuned system that is designed to prevent and then interact with the consequences of what is happening in our communities, whether it is violence, terrorism, corruption, lack of opportunities, exclusion, discrimination, whatever it might be. So that would be my vision of it. And how does my work fit into that well-tuned system? I would say that on the local level in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I was born and where I still live, that would be working on transforming the narratives that are left in our context after a war that we had at the end of the previous century. And 30 years after, there's still consequences of inadequate dealing with the past. So for me, it would be effective dealing with the past on the local level, but on the global level, it would be providing opportunities for education and inclusion of especially minority groups and marginalized groups such as women, youth, indigenous communities. And there's just so much more. But I think that SDG 16 is so big, and as Yoshuki rightfully mentioned, is that there is so much inside, and a blessing of that is that everyone has something to contribute from their own work when it comes to peace, justice, and strong institutions. What I would lastly say is that for me, the biggest impact that I was able to make in my local community is to help young people, but also those working with young people, to start rethinking the status of peace and not be content with what we have described as peace in our community right now. Because I live in a very negative, hostile peace. I'm glad there's no outright violence happening, but there's so many microaggressions that happen on a daily basis that affect the status of peace. And so just the beginning of that is starting to rethink the status quo that we're in. And I think that is a good start for us to have.
Wonderful. You've done such incredible work that really just helps us do exactly what you spoke about, right? Which is building a sustainable system that looks at the past to help us build a more just future. Incredible work. I'm going to move on to Laith now. Laith, you're welcome to answer the question.
Thank you. So in regards to the question and what I envision for the future, I think the vision that I would have for the future would be basically a community, a global community, where people are side by side, where some of the things that are censored right now are openly accepted, openly practiced, and discussed, I think, in a healthier way. Because things, for example, such as religion, culture, other things like that, I think one of the main problems that we are facing right now in our current global community and society is the misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and the fear that a lot of people have towards other cultures, religions, and the lack of knowledge basically about them, in my opinion, is kind of what drives most of that. Because looking at most of these things at their core basis, most of the global religions, they all foster the same principles and foundations. We can all agree within all of those religions, within all of those cultures, that, for example, assault is a bad thing, murder is a bad thing. It starts becoming different in small little things, and I think instead of having that something that divides us, it should be a kind of a culture of learning and acceptance and discussions. And that basically it kind of goes back to the point that Samira was mentioning earlier, that yes, there is a need for a larger system at hand, which can basically enable and provide security and safety for the people. But the microaggressions that she was mentioning earlier, I think the only way that it's possible to kind of change and stop those microaggressions that we see on a daily basis is through a change in the culture of our communities around the world, by changing the mindsets of people, by growing a mindset of acceptance of education, by having a different intent to the people that we're dealing with. That's the way that we can stop that, because no matter how efficient or developed a system may be, at the end of the day, there would be no way to completely control everyone that's around us, all of their actions on a day-to-day basis. The only way to kind of foster harmony is to actually have it come from people from within themselves, and not because of a system that's imposing it on them, basically. And I think, for example, in terms of our organization, one of the things that we're trying to do is exactly that in Europe, for example. Now, our name is the European Arab Student Union. One of our main objectives and goals is to actually not spread, but kind of basically invite people to learn about the Arab culture in Europe. A lot of people in Europe have never met Arab people before going to university or after university, for example, and they have little knowledge about our culture, our traditions, our ways. What little knowledge they do have, I would say, unfortunately, comes from some very, very biased and flawed and incorrect sources of media. So I think the way to do it, for what we're trying to do in one of our main objectives, is that we want to show people the truth of our culture, the beauty of it, of our communities, of our organization, how similar we are and not how different we are. And whatever differences we do have, it's something to learn from, it's something to accept, it's something that basically allows us to complement each other and then take it forward together. And that's what I hopefully envision for the future of our world.
Wonderful, Laith. I just love the idea of our interpersonal relationships contributing to institutions and really helping us see change, right? On a very almost cerebral societal level. Thank you so much for that. Anna, last but not least.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this amazing panel, and also my regards and greetings to my fellow panelists. I mean, all their answers were amazing. So, I believe really that when SDG 16 is implemented, at least for me, the first word that comes is inclusion and peace as well, right? So, peace meaning no wars, no conflict, and we would be living in a society where crime and corruption is reduced, if not, it would be extinguished, let's say. But I would hope that countries and nations would be able to, picking up on what Leith has said, picking up on the transformation of their relationships, and use dialogue in order to continue to evolve as a global community. I mean, for my personal experience, by working at CAICID, where we promote dialogue and interreligious and intercultural dialogue, I have been able and be lucky to witness the power of transformational dialogue. And so I think that bringing those two together, where we are able to create spaces where we can bring communities together to learn about each other, to build relationships, I think that would be the perfect world for once we don't need SDG 16 anymore. I know it's a long topic as well, because it's so big and there's so many points to touch on. But I guess also in terms of inclusion, I would see with SDG 16 a more inclusive approach in terms of democratic processes. And that would include involving the role that young people have to play in these democratic processes. I mean, the fact that you can only vote when you're 18 in certain countries, when there's amazing young people doing lots of amazing work and contributing towards their societies. But also justice systems in the sense that everyone feels protected, but also everyone has access to it, where these systems are not corrupted, but represent everyone and work for everyone. And so, in short, I think that this is how I would envision SDG 16 fully implemented. But through my work, I'm able to contribute towards it by working with religious leaders or educators and interreligious dialogue practitioners who work with young people all over the world. I'm able to work with them in terms of capacity building tools that they may need for their specific context. And that's my small drop in the ocean, let's say. But I do believe that all of us all of us are drops in the ocean, but together we are the ones who make the sea and the ocean work. So that's in short my answer.
Wonderful. It's a drop in the ocean that creates ripples of change. So I think that's beautiful. I'd like to actually take a moment right now and invite those who are watching us, whether you're on the platform or you're joining us on social media, please use the chat, comment below, and let us know your answer to the question. And I'll just repeat it again. If you imagine a world where SDG 16 is fully realized, what would that world look like to you? Please use the chat, please comment below, and help us also understand what your vision for a society that is peaceful, has justice, and strong institutions looks like. I'm now going to move on to our next question, and this one is for you, Yosuke. You're someone who, plays a role as an advisor in an institution, a very large institution that is really entrenched within, our global system, the United Nations, right? And so I really want to ask you, how important is it to have strong institutions that are able to support youth-led initiatives for peace and justice?
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. As you said just a while ago, I have been sometimes just associating, not like engaging with some really global and huge institutional bodies as like a member of expert meeting and a member of technical working groups and advisory board as well. But obviously, yes, as we can see now, almost I can say for example, every single UN agencies nowadays have a youth advisory board. And when we have international conference or international summit, absolutely we will see youth delegate. So that trend is really important, and that is really getting bigger and bigger. But at the same time, for example, when I'm in such meetings or such space in New York, Geneva, even UK, Tokyo, Japan, I always thinking about, so what's the inclusiveness, serious inclusiveness and the true inclusiveness? Because there are tens of thousands of youth delegates, for example, in New York, UN headquarters in New York, even at the Summit of the Future. Yes, there are so many youth, but most of the youth looks like very elite. So they can speak English very well, and they can speak in other language like French, Spanish as well, and they're really juniors and the graduates from the really nice, high-level universities in the world. And but at the same time, we know there are tens of thousands of young people who cannot access to such places. Even they cannot speak English. Even they don't have passport. And even many people cannot access to the internet. So we really have to seriously think about such people when we talk about such policy making or inclusiveness. So that's why, that actually I cannot answer to your question exactly, but when I think about such topic, I'm always thinking about that things. So that's why nowadays I'm, with the Global Task Force for Youth Combatant, we are more like focusing on such young people in a really remote area, in the marginalized places, in the challenging places or countries, I can say. So that's, what I'm thinking indeed. So, but that's just one of examples, I think. So in many like domains or in many fields or any kind of activities, such perspective is really, really important now, I think. And for that, maybe young people, youth, have a great potential because they can think about something new and they can break it through. So that's, one of the great potential I think the youth have for that. Thank you.
Brilliant. I think I love that you've just highlighted how, exclusion can be very insidious. We think we're bringing in young people, but actually there's so many ways that we are excluding them. I love that you highlighted that, and, the importance of those voices that are marginalized, that are sometimes hidden and ignored. Laith, I have the same question for you. I mean, you're someone who really works, you founded your own sort of like student union, which is really at the grassroots of youth movement and action. And so really, how important is it? You're someone who navigates institutions. So how important is that idea of having institutions be able to respond to youth-led initiatives?
I think it's incredibly, incredibly important. Besides my own institution, actually, I've worked with a lot of other institutions back home. A lot of them were actually targeted at youth empowerment. So one of them was actually an educational one for less privileged youth in our community, and the other one was targeted at the entire youth community of in Jordan, basically. I think something that's very important to consider, this goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, and it's actually going to be a key thing that I'm going to focus on maybe today, culture. So in this specific case, for instance, I would say culture within those larger institutions, parent or organizations, government institutions, which are, let's say, the mentors for our smaller or younger organizations. The culture within those organizations and the perspective that they hold towards our organizations and even to us as youth and individuals is something that is very important to take into account, because that can dictate how much that we can actually produce and how much work that we can fulfill in the future. The way that I think it should move towards, and I hope that it will move towards, is that we should be looked at, the youth, our institutions, our organizations, us, we should be looked at more as partners, as bold students, people who have ideas, not as basically children in a minimalistic way, which basically kind of negates our ideas, our thoughts, our capabilities. The future that we are building right now is for the youth, and the youth should have a bigger responsibility in that, not just a part of basically photo ops and cameras and initiatives that don't really hold any actual responsibility. No, they should have the actual responsibility, actual capabilities to try things, to try initiatives, to fail and learn, with the guidance of our mentors, with the guidance of the older generation that has come before us, those strong institutions that we were talking about. But those institutions have to give the youth the freedom, the capabilities, and the ability to experiment, and the ability to actually exert real impact and real influence, not just fake influence. I would say that kind of works that, we're actually doing something for the youth in terms of a photo op or a marketing strategy, but you're not really actually giving them any potential or any actual ability to create real, genuine impact. And I think that's what has to change.
Lovely. I think it's so important, to address the cultural perceptions of young people, right? As custodians of the future, rather than sort of these really incompetent people who are unable to do anything. It's very, very important, that shift. I'm going to turn now to you, Anna. You are someone who's worked at the intersection of gender rights, of migrant rights, and migrant rights are often connected to economic rights as well. And you've also done a lot of work around, faith-based activism. My question to you is that in advocating for peace and justice, what are some of the approaches that maybe you've used in your own practice that can help us address interconnected issues like inequality and discrimination and marginalization, really the intersection of all those things? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Babs. I think what I've seen in my personal and professional experience, it's twofold. So when I was working for the Faith and Belief Forum, a way that we sought to advocate and promote for inclusive and cohesive societies would be through education. And how did we do this? We provided teachers with training and tools on how to empower their classrooms, their diverse and multicultural classrooms. But we also worked with young people where we gave them the tools and empowered them on how to navigate such a diverse world that they lived in, and how to deal with those differences, right? And so for me, that was important. And it always goes back to one thing. I think it's us as human beings and our relationships with who we are, how we see ourselves, how we perceive others, how others perceive us. It's all interconnected. And when it comes to inequalities and discrimination. And once we're able to understand a bit more of who we are able to deal with those differences, those external differences, let's say. But another thing that I've been seeing, especially now that I am with Kaisid, where we still work at the intersections of migration and gender equality youth, is again education, but also funding. Meaning, we start by providing the tools, but I mean, it's not in a paternalistic way, just FYI. It's more in a, we are creating a space together where we can learn from each other and see what we can come up with. How can we empower ourselves in order to go out there and create a change in our small communities, in our families? Our families are communities, and we can start there even. So once we've gone through the process of education and empowerment, it is important to give some follow up. And at Kaisid, um, we recently launched grants for young people. Why? Because again, young people many times feel like not feel like, I mean, I've experienced it and I've noticed it where we're invited to places, but it's just to look good for the picture. We are there smiling, but no one is really hurt. But then young people have so many great ideas, but we don't have sometimes the funding or the access to those resources that we need to be able to implement these. So listening to all of this, the Europe region at Kaisid launched the Catalyst for Cohesion, which is a grant for and by young people, meaning the group needs to be youth between the ages of 18 and 35, and they are working together throughout the year and being mentored by other young people who are working on the field to implement initiatives in their communities. And this is not one thing. It's not just, let's do this and then, you can go your own way and we don't know what happens after. So we are trying to connect this with policy making as well. So once they have completed their projects and initiatives, these young people will go through a series of events around Europe to disseminate the findings and the results. And hopefully we will engage with policymakers at the EU level and thus taking these initiatives forward and making them grow and grabbing the attention of the people that are making decisions. We're not able to make decisions yet in terms of politics, let's say, but we can sure influence, and that's what we've noticed within CAICID, and that's what we're trying to do. It's a pilot project, so let's see how well it goes as well. But all the intentions are here, and the projects that have been selected are fantastic. And yeah, so happy to provide any information, further information if people need it. But yeah, this is one of the ways we found to make a change and advocate for young people.
Wonderful. And I love that it's a program that looks at the different ways that, we're facing challenges on an intersectional basis. I think that's so very important, and that the support that is offered is so completely holistic. Incredible work. And I'm sure others would love to learn more about it, and we'll find ways to do so after this conversation. Samira, I want to, move on to you. You work with an organization called URI, which is the United Religions Initiative. And this is a global body that's very intentional, though, about supporting local institutions. I find it quite interesting, though, that, local organizations that are at the grassroots often sort of get ignored when it comes to the larger global conversation or within the global arena. And so my question to you is, within the work that you do, how do we do the work of balancing the importance of strengthening in local institutions while also being able to contribute to global peace efforts?
Thank you. So as you pointed out, I do work for URI, which stands for United Religions Initiative, and my role at URI is to support grassroots groups in the work that they do on daily enduring interfaith cooperation, ending religiously motivated violence, and creating cultures of peace, justice, and healing. And there is a fine dance between what we as supporters of such work do to encourage global action versus local. URI is constructed in a way that we invite grassroots groups to come and join URI for different benefits that they get by being members of the network. And I think that the biggest resource in this day to day, apart from funding is, as Anna pointed out rightfully, is a big challenge in navigating these difficult conversations around peace building, justice, strong institutions. But right next to funding, networking and sort of connections are the next next best thing that you can provide to people, definitely, or even at the same level, depending on what the local needs are. So when we invite these groups to come to URI, there is no intention for this global, the largest interfaith grassroots peacebuilding organization, to dictate what you get to do on the grassroots. Such an intervention would be doing exactly the opposite of what the grassroots needs. Coming from a perspective of someone that was born during the war and who has experienced post-war society in my country, I've seen a lot of missed opportunities later on as I've been analyzing them as a professional peace builder in my career. There were a lot of attempts to get these global ideas, take them as they are, and implement them in our community, which backfired spectacularly. That is a missed opportunity to take a global initiative such as the SDGs and the Agenda 2030 as a global, sort of the entire framework, and at the center of it, we have these 17 SDGs. We can take that as a global idea and a global initiative and implement it at the heart of our communities. Because each of the communities will approach each of these 17 SDGs in a specific way. There might be a specific need in the United States from where to start from. There might be a different need in South Africa, a different need in China, wherever we might be on this planet, there is a different starting point. And that's why these global frameworks are great, because they offer us so many opportunities, so many great ideas that we can implement, but context is everything. Take a global initiative and a global idea and start from scratch in your community, analyzing the needs of the community, the past of the community, the resources that the community has, and start from there and build a sustainable and inclusive society that we need. In my opinion, the global agenda is not there to dictate what is happening in our countries. Even when it comes to the Agenda 2030, the UN can only advise countries to implement the SDGs. The implementation of the SDGs is in the hands of the countries, and not just countries, but private sector, often neglected when it comes to the influence of the SDGs. And then civil society, governmental institutions, and so on. So at URI, we do not see us as dictating the flow of the grassroots, but rather finding initiatives that are relevant for a particular concern for the community and supporting that cooperation circle, which we call our member groups, supporting these cooperation circles and finding the best solutions for their own community. Where does the global community come into that play? Exchange of experiences is incredibly important. I remember once, and that's the call when I met you, Babalwa, a cooperation circle from South Africa and a cooperation circle from Bosnia and Herzegovina got together on a call, and we spoke about challenges of youth activism and youth inclusion. The history and the culture of South Africa and Bosnia could not be more different. Like, historically, these two parts of the world have almost never met. But here's what we found out. The same frustrations exist. The same challenges for the youth inclusion exist. Same obstacles, but also some of the same opportunities exist. And so the exchange of the most valuable resource, which is our experience and our capacities, is something that these global organizations can provide. But dictating the flow of the grassroots, never, because we do not have the right to say, my solution is best, implement my solution. And just to add as a last part to my answer, why interfaith is so important to me personally, and why working for URI is more of a passion than just a job, is because I understand why, in my personal life, how big of a motivator faith is. And I understand through my work that faith has an incredible capacity to inspire individuals to put their best forward and to work in their communities. And also, it's a connecting factor to other people. And so interfaith dialogue is for me in my work, in my surroundings, both locally and globally, interfaith is a beautiful vehicle that I use to achieve goals, whether it is SDG 16 or environmental justice, social justice, whatever it might be. Faith has an incredibly sort of high potential for motivating individuals to do good. And I think that we need to, at least in my work, I rely heavily on that when it comes to gathering people and helping them to organize and bring a change that their community desperately needs, and sort of exchange with others at the same time.
Brilliantly said. I really love that. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking about the context of the world that we live in 2024. I don't know for anyone else, but for me, definitely 2024 has been interesting, to put it mildly. And I think it's been very interesting because I think it's the first time, at least in recent history, where we've really had to confront our institutions in a way that I feel like we haven't done before. If you think about, the UN, if you think about the ICC, the ICJ, if you think about even private institutions, these conglomerates that have been found to be prioritizing their bottom line at the expense of, marginalized and developed nations. If you think about even faith institutions, which you've spoken about, Samira, if you think about our government institutions, we've really had to confront whether these institutions that we've been placing our trust in for such a long time have been really answering the call for peace and justice. And in some instances, I think they've come up lacking. And maybe we could even say they've been failures, right? And so, Yusuke, I have a question for you. In a moment where, we feel and we see institutions not being able to respond effectively to crises, how can young leaders step in to fill in the gaps?
Well, yeah, that's a really, really difficult question, because actually, yeah, we have been working in some very challenging places, like place in Somalia and Yemen. And it is really tough, especially in some specific field, like my field, like de-radicalization and frontline negotiations with such groups and doing, reintegration and reconciliation. It's really tough. And, the local government and the local institutions, their capacities, of course, are really limited because they're in the war. So in such situation, of course, even in such situation, there are many young people on the ground and they have potential. And actually, with the world, they have been seeing it is some tangible actions, like youth-led actions, to tackle many difficulties on the ground. So that's really, really, yeah, obviously. But at the same time, like when we tackle really difficult issues on the ground, it's we need to have like allies. So on the topic, like I'm always thinking about like the role of outsiders, the role of third party, because there is some unique potentials of that parties as well. So that's why, of course, it's with the world and the many stakeholders have to stand up together and to support such real local leaders, local heroes on the ground, to like amplify their potential because they have power, they have will. But like as you said, they at the same time they are facing many difficulties, like fundings, like protections, many things. So that's why, like to unleash their potential, it's with the world, the many stakeholders, including maybe you said like private companies or the private sectors, whatever. It's a need to like stand up together to empower, to support them. So at the end of the day, they are the main actors because they are in the field and they know the situation and they have a potential and the will. So, but at the same time, someone need to support them to unpack their potential. So that's what I'm saying.
Very important, the idea of support. Laith, I want to throw it to you and ask you the same question. In moments where institutions are unable to respond effectively to crises, how can young people and young leaders step in to fill in the gaps?
Well, I think the best way to address this question would be, unfortunately, to kind of look at the genocide that's happening right now in Palestine and to kind of consider the role that youth played in this particular crisis over the last year and so. So we've seen the inefficiency and the lack of capability that international organizations such as the UN, that even governments have had in order to kind of stop the genocide or to kind of help as many people as possible. But we've also seen the youth-led movements that have been a huge part of basically making sure that people are still fighting for this, making sure that it's still relevant, making sure that even if we may not be able to stop it, whatever little we are able to do and to provide, we are doing that. I think it's one of the most important things that so many of these movements over the last year and so have been led by youth. And I think it kind of goes back to the first question that we had at the beginning of this discussion, which is basically the future that we envision. I think, despite everything that has happened, I think there has been one small glimpse, a silver lining, let's call it, of what the future could hold for all of us together because of how the youth have come together and reacted together to everything that's happening. If you look at, for example, the all of the youth-led movements that have happened in Europe and other countries around the world, for Palestine, for Lebanon, for what's happening right now, you would find some of the most diverse groups of people coming together that you will ever see, from all different types of backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities, whatever it may be. And it kind of goes back to the earlier vision that we have for the future, which is a future where we basically, instead of focusing on our differences, we focus on our common humanity. We come together for issues such as this, and I think that youth plays such a significant role in driving that, and that with this crisis that has been happening, with this genocide, they have taken the first step in doing that, in bringing people together from everywhere so that they can bring their humanity, their morality, their consciousness together to focus on one really important thing that's happening, to kind of do whatever we can, even if it may not be to stop it, just to kind of alleviate some of the suffering that people have been facing. And I think this is one of the cases where we have set the bar for the larger institutions, for the international institutions, for our governments to follow, and not the other way around. And I think that's something that we have to keep going with in the future. Now, for Palestine, for this genocide, for all other issues, this was a very important first step, I think, in terms of youth leadership and youth movements, and just the image that it captured of inclusivity and importance, basically, and capability. I think that's something that we have to take and implement into all of the other aspects of our lives into the future.
Absolutely. What I love about your answer, Laith, is that you're showing us how young people are already doing the work of stepping into the gaps. So that's really exciting. We are nearing the end of our conversation. And so I just have one last question that I would like all our panelists to answer. And I'd like to invite all of our panelists to sort of stretch back into your own memory. And I really want you to consider and think about a moment in your own journey where maybe you felt overwhelmed, perhaps powerless in the face of everything that's happening, injustice, war, just a complete disregard for just this idea of having peace within our world. I'd like you to think about that younger version of you. And I'd like you to just share with us one piece of advice that you would give that version of you to help them continue to do the work of fighting for peace and justice. We'll start with you, Anna.
Thank you, Babs. I look at myself and I would say that doubt yourself, but do not doubt yourself too much, because you need to keep the balance in between I know everything and I know nothing. And so you need to keep yourself pushing yourself and challenging yourself to learn new things and meet new people. I think, I sometimes I say that I'm famous for, I will jump, but I will cry while jumping. And so do it. Don't be, like you can cry, you're falling, but don't worry, you have the support system and we will find a way to pick it back up. And you can only learn from these lessons, and it will make you a resilient young person and resourceful individual. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful.
I think the advice I would give myself, even right now, especially, I think, is to keep going despite whether or not the results are visible, I would say, because it's very easy to spend hundreds of hours, thousands of hours on working on something specific, hoping to kind of create even the smallest change or smallest influence that we want to see in the world. A lot of times it's not visible, it's not quantifiable, but it is felt. And I have to say that I think that over time, maybe not now, maybe in the future, all of this effort that we put in as youth will be felt on a much, much, much larger scale. And that's why that the advice I would give myself basically is to keep going and not focus on specifically kind of tangible results at this current moment, but just to focus on doing what's right and basically just putting my all into creating even the smallest change.
Great. Thank you, Laith. Yosuke?
Yeah, thanks. My advice is like everything about will. So where there's a will, there's a way. So it's really truth indeed. So actually, even me, like when I established my NGO, I mean that when I took actions, I was like 19 years old and a freshman of my university. I couldn't speak English at all, and I had nothing of money, and I didn't have any degree knowledge, and I didn't have any experience. But I started, talk to many people in my university first of all, and in my community first of all, and I did a lot of part-time job in a restaurant, so many days, and to earn money for activities, and a lot more. And then anyway, just start to take actions. So and gradually, already like 13 years passed. I'm somehow mature now, but that journey is really, from scratch, from literally zero. So I understand many young people like are facing many things, lack of money, lack of many things, lack of opportunities. I know. So, but please have a strong will. As long as you have a will, there are many ways, and believe in yourself. And I'm with you, and we're with you. So you're not alone. So, and I think this is the time for you. So let's take action together. Let's go. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then Samira, your final words of wisdom.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to think of a time when I need to go back and offer some reassurance to myself about the work that I am doing / I need to be doing at that moment, but I can't find a time in the past that needed more of that encouragement than me in the present. Observing the world today is incredibly challenging. My work offers me an insight into so many communities and the struggles that they're going through. And often I give advice to people as a way of trying to mentor them or to offer advice because that is sort of what I'm supposed to do. But it's often hard to implement those tips and tricks into my own life and to deal with the challenges that I feel as I'm doing the work. So what I want everyone to know is that this version of me right now needs an acknowledgement that peace building work is incredibly hard. And striving to peace is not a luxury that we have, it's an absolute necessity. And anyone who does not understand what it feels like not to live in peace should reach deeper into their core of compassion and try to figure out why others need your thoughts and your prayers and your action right now, no matter where they might be. And so I often offer encouragement to other people, saying that it's okay, it's just a phase, it will go. But right now, I feel like I need that encouragement. I need a sense of community and sense of understanding. And yeah, but all of that is summed up is that this work is not hard, and do not allow anyone on the face of this earth to try to prove you wrong. You're doing an amazing job right here, right now, today, with just one needle that you're moving, trying to help someone, to support someone, or to strive for peace. Previously, I mentioned that my faith is a big inspiration for the work that I do. And when it comes to peace, justice, sometimes it's not easy to act. I understand people who are not able to act in certain positions. And what my faith teaches me, that at least what I can do is in my heart feel sort of a disapproval of what is happening. And I think that that moment from my heart that I disapproved of certain things in the history of my country brought me to action. And hopefully it will bring many others from that internal reflection, from that moment of disliking the current situation, it will bring them to make some sort of action for peace.
Sure. And on that brilliantly insightful note, I'm going to close today's conversation. I just want to thank all our panelists. You really contributed to this conversation. I think we could speak for the whole day. Just learning from all of you. You are all just wells of wisdom. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank those who have joined and watched us today, and from wherever they're joining us, for indulging us in this very brilliant conversation. And as we close, I just really want to, because it really struck me, something that was said yesterday by a speaker who was part of a panel. And he said that, we can be very clear about the vision that we have for the future. And we can also be very well versed about what the reality is now and the problems that arise. But what really is missing is the bridge between those two things. And I really just want to commend the Charter for Compassion for this brilliant platform that is helping us do the work of building that bridge together. And so thank you to everyone who's joined us. We're going to hop off and allow for the next conversations to take place. But thank you so much for such a rich conversation.